everyone, welcome back to Heartbeat Narratives. My name is Molly and I'm your host, and I'm very excited to do another mini episode. It's been a few months since I last did a check-in in February for Valentine's Day, and I figured it would be the perfect time now that we're entering into the summer months to share some learnings that I've had and also get into the roses, buds, and thorns of my day-to-day life. Because I realized that when I'm interviewing so many people and doing a deep dive into their lives, sometimes there's not the same opportunity for us to build that connection with one another. And I really want that to be a priority so that we can connect on that deeper level as well. So since January, there have been over 20 episodes that we've put out for Heartbeat Narratives. And I'm so thrilled that it's actually happening because this podcast has been in my brain for a couple years, and to have episodes out and feel like they're out there being shared and spiraling in the world, that those voices and stories of those people can be continuously shining and interpreted in different ways through whoever's listening. And I think that that's the whole lesson of what I'm trying to learn in my own life, is that every person's story is valuable. And leading with curiosity is such a gift that each of us have the opportunity to explore, but we just have to kind of work that muscle so that we do ask meaningful questions of the people in our lives. So I figured I would start with the game that I shared about in my last mini episode. I love asking people what are their roses, their thorns, and their buds. And these are essentially the highlights, what is new in your life, and maybe things that aren't going so well. And it could be from your day, from your week, from the last month or year. And yeah, I just wanted to dive into a rose, a thorn, and a bud in my own life. I'll start with the thorn because I want it to go up from here. I recently went to Japan, which I absolutely loved. Going from Honolulu to Tokyo is quite easy. It's just a direct flight. I think it's 8.5 to 9 hours going there, but coming back, there's a tailwind, so it's like 6 hours. And so it's pretty straightforward travel. And for those of us that live in Hawaiʻi, we know that to get anywhere from the islands, it's at least 5 hours. And there's this strong connection between Hawaiʻi and Japan. And I realized that my thorn is that I only speak one language. I would love to speak Japanese. I would love to speak Spanish, Norwegian, German, Hawaiian. There's so much that can open up if you're multilingual. And as I was traveling throughout Japan and eating amazing food and watching sushi chefs make this beautiful meal in front of us, I was like, wow, what an opportunity it would have been to have been able to speak Japanese with them and interview them for Heartbeat Narratives about why they love what they do. Because what I've seen is, in Japan especially, the attention to detail and the pride in the craft, whatever it might be, whether it is cooking or making pastries or serving tea or working at a retail store. There is so much pride that goes into what every single person does and contributes. And I think that there would be a richness and a depth to those stories that I'm not able to access because I'm only an English speaker. But it also challenges me to at least learn a few words and phrases to get by when I am traveling. Because I think to be a true global citizen, there is a level of flexibility and accommodation that we must have in order to really connect with other people, or at least show effort in trying to connect. The next is my bud, and A bud is something that's blossoming, growing in your life. It may be really small right now, but you're trying to give it new life and new breath. This spring, I had this incredible opportunity to participate in Air Media's New Voices Amplify cohort. And it was a fellowship alongside 15 other podcasters. And Air Media is the Association of Independents in Radio. So essentially, we're all hosting shows or podcasts or working in radio, but we're independent or freelancing or doing it as a side gig. For me, this has kind of been like a side passion for a couple years, and I was participating through my other podcast, which is called Above the Sides, and that's the one that I do through my work. It's all about Aloha and how we can weave the values of Aloha into our day-to-day lives, whether it's in our careers, in our personal lives, and how those values can influence the economy, especially here in Hawaii, because I work for an economic development nonprofit, and this podcast is part of the legacy of my mentor, Uncle Pono Shim. To participate in the Amplify program through Above the Sides, I was just so in awe of everybody else's creations, their podcast babies, because when you're on a Zoom call with people who are regularly talking into microphones and they're pretty good at it and they're professional, everyone had such a nice voice. And it was almost laughable because every time someone would talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm listening to the radio. And they're engaging, enthusiastic, and creative. So I will link the other podcasts into this show's description, because each of them really deserves a shout out, and the variety of podcasts that were represented in this cohort was really cool. We had shows that were for dating and relationships, women's wellness and autonomy, farming and connection to mindfulness, stories of Indigenous people around the world, surviving cancer, true crime, a podcast about the Olympics, personal finances, book clubs. There was just so much variety, and I'm a huge fan of everybody's work, and we're starting to do mini collaborations with one another, especially if the scopes of our podcasts align. So in a couple days, I'm going to launch one of those collaborations with Frank Oscar Weaver, and he is the host of the Indigenous Earth Community podcast, and that will come out in celebration of World Environment Day, which is through the United Nations. And since his stories are all about Indigenous people's connections to the earth, I thought that that would be really good timing. And then my episode on his show will also come out this week. I think that just participating in this cohort opened up my world to what it's like to work in radio. This really can be something that blossoms into something bigger, and I didn't realize what resources were out there for me. So big mahalo to the team at Air Media, TK, Casper, Sheba. I learned so much, and I'm incredibly grateful to stay connected to everyone, especially when I have questions about all things related to audio. The next thing I wanted to get into was my rose. 2 weekends ago, I had the opportunity to go to Hawaiʻi Island. Here, we call it Big Island because it is the biggest island, and if you look on a map, it's huge. But I was going for work. We started in Kona and then slowly made our way up to Hawi and then all the way over to Hilo side. And I was visiting farms, doing a little bit of agricultural work, and just learning so much about, what are the needs of our local farmers and those who work in the food system here in Hawaii. But I ended up staying longer for the weekend, and a couple of our friends flew over to join us in Hilo. Our plan was to explore the farmers markets, see the waterfalls, do at least one hike, and then on Sunday night, we wanted to go to Hawaiʻi Volcanoes National Park. Our plan was to drive down there in the evening so that we could see the transition from daytime to nighttime and witness that sunset period. So we started the drive down. It was about an hour south. We get into the park and it's totally empty. We drive on through and we kind of wind down the road and ended up parking along the side of the road because we saw all these people running, but running towards something. And we were like, okay, well, maybe we should park here, pulled over into the closest spot, got out, and it was freezing. It had been like 80 degrees in Hilo, but as you head south and then go up in elevation, it got really cold. It was about 64 degrees, which for Hawaii is quite cold. I know for other parts of the world, that's nothing. That's like shorts and flip-flop weather. But for us, it was chilly. So we put on our sweaters, whatever we had in the trunk, and started following the crowds of people. And as we got closer and closer to the caldera, which is sort of this like deep inlet where the volcano erupts, we realized that it was bright red and Kīlauea was erupting like huge. She was shooting in the air like 1,000 feet. This was around 5:30 p.m., 6 o'clock. And we realized that she had just started going off and that most people there just happened to randomly be there as it started. There was so much excitement because, this happens on the Earth's timing. It's not when we want the eruption to happen. It'll just happen when Mother Earth, when Tutu Pele, our volcano goddess, decides that it will happen. And so we're just standing there in awe because the red is so vibrant and it's just like literally the earth coming alive. I felt like it was the beginning of time itself because it was like nothing I've ever seen before. It's not man-made, it's totally wild. And we're just these tiny little humans standing along the crater rim with our little phones taking pictures of something that has this like immense power. It was initially really loud because so many people were talking and calling their loved ones on the phone and just kind of like exclaiming in excitement like, whoa, what are we looking at? And, we're taking videos. As the evening moved on and the sun started to set, there was almost this like reverence that came over everybody. Even though more and more people were driving into the park and the crowds were getting bigger, it felt like there was this level of respect that we were all just standing in awe of. I've never really experienced anything quite like it. And I think only the natural worlds can do that to us. So we were walking further along the crater rim, through the forest, and even though there were just like hundreds of people around, I started to notice that some people, most of them were from Hawaiʻi Island, Kama'aina residents, and they're super excited because they live on the Big Island. And when Tutu Pele erupts, it's such a time to honor and respect her because it's really, you never know when it will happen. So there were a handful of people that I noticed were sitting alone quietly right on the rim of the crater, just looking out into the caldera, almost like they were in a meditative state. But it was so peaceful and respectful, and they were just looking right into the glow. And even though there's the hustle and bustle around where like families and kids are trying to catch a glimpse between the trees or over the fence, these other folks were just in this really beautiful state of awe, I would call it. And it helped me slow down in the moment and be present. We just continued walking up further and further, closer to the eruption, and there were fewer people up there, and it was getting a lot darker and colder. But because the night was setting in, the glow of the lava was even brighter, and the lava lake that was being created below was expanding, and it's just slowly oozing, moving, and becoming wider and wider, and it in itself created like an even stronger glow in the caldera. So I highly recommend that you look up pictures or videos from the May 25th eruption of Kīlauea, because it was just awesome, epic, once-in-a-lifetime experience. And I felt like it was even more special because we didn't know that it was happening before we arrived. So to me, that was just like a rose of my whole life, but definitely of the last few months. I think what I learned from seeing this eruption was that there's this beauty in the unknown, and that if you're open to the magic of life and wanting to be there in reverence of the natural world, then to be totally present for it is such a gift. And so I'm just super grateful that it happened, and hopefully one day I'll get to see the lava again, but if it doesn't happen, that's totally okay. And a continuation of that rose was when we flew back to Honolulu, we took a Lyft home, and our Lyft driver, she asked us, what did we do on the Big Island? And we said that we saw the eruption, and she had received all these pictures from one of her friends who was there. But we showed her some of ours, and we even airdropped them to her. She was asking questions like, did you have a deeper sense ahead of time? Like, did you know that Pele was going to erupt? Did you feel that serendipity? And I didn't feel that sense, but once we were there, it was like a very strong knowing that we were meant to be there and meant to be in that awe of her. And I thought it was so sweet because she said that her parents were in their 90s, and even though she would love to take them to Hawaiʻi Volcanoes National Park one day, that instead she would still be able to show them the photos and the videos that we sent her. I felt like it was such a blessing that these shared moments can lead to other places of connection between family members. And so I know so many of you out there have probably had like a really good conversation with a cab driver or someone, on the subway before. But when you have them, and it's just very memorable and caring and loving, even though you're essentially strangers. That's what it felt like, and I think that connection really uplifted my day and was another smaller rose in its own way. By now, I feel like I've completely talked your ear off. I was not planning on going so in depth with my rose, but again, highly recommend that you look up pictures of the May 25th eruption. Lastly, I just wanted to share a couple books that I've been reading lately, because it's fun to share resources that are kind of elevating your life. So one that I've read recently was written by a friend of mine. His name is Felix Wolf. He was actually my acupuncturist here in Hawaii. He's lived an incredible life, and he wrote The Art of Navigation, Travels with Carlos Castaneda and Beyond. It has really taught me to look at life from a slightly different perspective, in that if you're open to the universe delighting you and sending you signs and being open to what life wants from you instead of what you want out of life, I think it's going to be a very interesting read. So, highly recommend The Art of Navigation by Felix Wolf. And then the other one that I've been reading is by Christina Moon, and it's called 3 Years on the Great Mountain, a memoir of Zen and fearlessness. And she is a Zen priest here in Hawaii at a monastery in Kalihi. She shares very intimate details of her training into fearlessness within the Zen practice. Her life is fascinating, and her mental stamina and physical stamina is inspiring. So 2 super good books that I've gotten into lately. I have a whole stack of others that I'll probably mention at some point, but I have to catch up on my reading because it's been so busy lately with work and podcasting. Thank you so much again for tuning into this mini episode. I appreciate you all so much and hope that you have a beautiful rest of your week, and look out for the upcoming episodes with Frank Oscar Weaver, and I have a couple more coming out from a few of my friends in Japan. So mahalo nui loa for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Aloha.